Did you know that the Martians from the War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells and also from all its movie adaptations were not actually the only Martian race or species that were described in the novel? It is a relatively unknown fact that H.G. Wells added in another Martian species, another race, which was actually described in the book but was never given screen time nor adapted into the movies. So here in this video, we will do them justice and showcase this second Martian race of the War of the Worlds. Let's get banging. But before that, we should actually talk about the primary or the main Martian race that was featured, and then when we showcase the second one, you would be able to contrast the big differences between these two. So in the War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, the primary Martians don't have full bodies like us. Instead, they are mostly a big head, about the size of a small table, around 4 feet long, with 2 large eyes and a beak-like mouth shaped like a V. Around the mouth are many long, thin tentacles that act like hands. These tentacles are flexible, whip-like, helping them to grab things and control their environment or machines. They don't have legs nor a normal body torso, so they can't walk on their own. That's why they depend on their huge tripod machines to move around on Earth. Their body design shows that they likely evolved in a very different manner in a different environment, which is obvious because their home planet is Mars and not Earth, and also probably there, their brains mattered more than physical bodies or strength. So biologically, these Martians mostly are composed of just a brain, a heart, lungs, and blood vessels, and also these tentacles, but no stomach nor a digestive system. And instead of eating food, they survive by taking blood directly from other living creatures, and including humans, and pumping it into their own bodies using special tools, like very advanced vampires. They also reproduce by budding, which means a new Martian grows out of another one, kind of like how some plants do. Their morphology might point towards a cephalopod animal creature, but their behavior is wild and alien, like them budding like plants or consuming food like parasites. But all in all, those are the Martians that are well known and loved by fans of H.G. Wells. Now we come to what you've been waiting for, the second race. In The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells in the novel, there is a very brief mention of a second kind of Martian that is quite different from the main invaders. So only a paragraph was written about them, as well as only a single official art was published. But what was said was eye-opening. Their undeniable preference for men as their source of nourishment is partly explained by the nature of the remains of the victims they had brought with them as provisions from Mars. These creatures, to judge from the shriveled remains that have fallen into human hands, were bipeds with flimsy, siliceous skeletons, almost like those of siliceous sponges, and feeble musculature, standing about 6 feet high and having round, erect heads and large eyes in flinty sockets. 2 or 3 of these seem to have been brought in each cylinder, and all were killed before Earth was reached. It was just as well for them, for the mere attempt to stand upright upon our planet would have broken every bone in their bodies. So these second race are often called the bipedal Martians, and they look a bit more human at first glance. They stand upright upon 2 legs, and they are about as tall as a person, around 6 feet tall. But when you look closer, they're much weaker and more fragile. Their skeletons are described as siliceous, meaning they're more like glass or mineral that are not as strong as bones, almost like the structure of certain sea sponges. Because of that, their bodies are very delicate, with thin, weak muscles that can handle much weight or pressure, since the gravity on Mars is way weaker than that of Earth. Their heads are round and they sit upright, with large eyes set in hard, stony-looking sockets, which gives them a strange, lifeless appearance. But maybe because they're dead they seem lifeless. Biologically, these creatures seem much less advanced than the main Martians because they are actually brought by the main Martians here. They aren't tough nor strong looking because of their weak bodies. Instead, they are treated almost like livestock. The dominant Martians bring them along as a food source since they rely on the blood of others to survive. These bipeds likely have simple internal systems compared to the main species, and their weak bodies suggest they evolved in Mars' low gravity, where they didn't need strong bones nor muscles. In fact, the story says they were all killed before reaching Earth because maybe the main Martians needed food and they were used as livestock, and when they reached Earth, they had drained their resources. In fact, just trying to stand under Earth's stronger gravity was theorized to have shattered their fragile bodies. So while they might look a little more familiar than the tentacled Martians, they are actually far less capable, basically a dependent lower level species used only to keep the real invaders alive or fed. This actually makes a lot of sense that the main Martians wouldn't be the only life forms from their world. Just like Earth has tons of different species, animals, plants, and microorganisms, Mars in the story was once described as an older, dying world that still had its own ecosystems and living things. The main Martians we see invading Earth are clearly the most intelligent and the most technologically advanced species, but evolution doesn't really create just one kind of creature on a whole planet, does it? Over time, different environments and conditions would have led to different species developing in their own ways. The existence of the weaker, bipedal Martians hints at this, suggesting they might be a separate branch of life that evolved alongside the main Martians but didn't really develop the same intelligence nor strength. Instead, they ended up being used as a resource, much like how humans use animals like birds, poultry, or cows for food. This idea fits really well into the book's themes because H.G.Wells was partly showing how evolution and survival shapes life in harsh ways, as stronger species dominate while weaker ones are controlled or consumed. So from here on forth it's all conjecture and theories, and one theory out there is that instead of being two totally separate species, the tentacled Martians and the bipedal ones can be seen as two branches of the same evolutionary tree that split a long time ago. So as Martian civilization grew more advanced, it is possible that a divide formed between those who control technology and those who didn't. Over millennia or maybe millions of years, the more powerful group may have changed themselves, either through natural selection, evolution, or deliberate biological engineering, changing into the brain-heavy tentacled beings we see, which focus on intelligence, efficiency, and machine use rather than physical strength or, moving with physical bodies. Meanwhile, the rest of the population may have been pushed into a lower role, slowly altered or bred for simpler purposes. This would explain why the bipeds still have a roughly human-like shape but are so weak, with soft silica-based skeletons and poor musculature that can't really handle Earth's gravity. They may not have always been like that, but over time their bodies became less about survival and more about being maintained as a resource by the main Martians. This also points to a very strict and unequal Martian society. The dominant ones seem to have moved beyond normal biology in many ways. They don't eat food, they don't walk, and they rely completely on machines and the direct blood transfusions to survive. That kind of lifestyle suggests they have intentionally removed anything they see as unnecessary, becoming almost pure thinking organisms, malevolent ones that is. In contrast, the bipedal Martians appear reduced and dependent, possibly once intelligent but now stripped down through long-term control and selective breeding. If that's the case, then Martian society isn't just advanced, it is deeply divided, with one group holding all power and reshaping others to serve them. H.G.Wells often explored ideas about evolution and social inequality, so this interpretation fits very well with the themes of the story. Also, the giant tripods, for example, they don't have to be seen only as war machines. They could have started as tools for control, like herding devices used to manage large groups of living resources. The handling machines, long, flexible arms, cage-like graspers, and even the black smoke could make sense as ways to capture, contain, and clear out areas quickly, not just to fight enemies, like how they did with humans once they landed on Earth. So if the Martians already treated other beings as livestock, then their invasion of Earth might have been more about gathering food than conquering land in a human sense. And since we humans are also bipedal and look similar to the second race, us becoming the next meal or the next herd of livestock would be a very viable theory. At the same time, the bipedal Martians could represent what happens to the rest of society when that kind of evil, malevolent, and unequal system goes too far. Instead of advancing along with the elites, they may have been pushed aside as machines took over their roles, and over many generations they could have been altered, weakened, and simplified until they were no longer independent thinkers at all, becoming passive and dependent. So the bipedal Martians are just a small, easy to miss detail that most adaptations simply leave them out, focusing instead on the iconic tripods and the tentacled invaders. However, in Jeff Wayne's The War of the Worlds, especially in the later visual adaptations and the stage versions of the musical, the Martian introduction sometimes shows strange, upright creatures being observed or experimented on by the dominant Martians. While this is never directly confirmed, these figures can be reasonably be seen as a nod to the bipedal Martians described in the book. The idea of them being exposed to things like the black smoke during the experiments in the musical fits with a larger theme that the Martians treat other life forms as test subjects or resources, never as equals. What makes this connection interesting is how it quietly expands the world without needing to explain it outright. And so that's all we have on the second Martian species from War of the Worlds. With that, we come to the end of this video. Now, do hit the like button for support and also click that bell button for regular updates or new uploads. Subscribe to be a part of Legion Nutbuck, and till the next time, take care, boys.